Today, we're going to be ranking every single WrestleMania of the 2000s, from WrestleMania 16 all the way up till last year's WrestleMania 38. Let's get into it. Guys, before we get into things, I want to remind you that every single No Nation Wrestling video is also available on audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, and more, linked down below. And if you want to support me, you can do so by becoming a channel member, receive a couple of exclusive perks, hit that join button down below as well. But here we go, man. We got our tier list set up. Every WrestleMania from 16 all the way up to last year's WrestleMania 38. If you've never seen any of these tier lists, it basically starts from the bottom and we go to the top. S tier is like God mode, the best of the best, in my opinion. So the reason I'm only doing the ones of the 2000s is because, like, some of the early WrestleManias, like the first, I don't know, 7, 8, like some of those way early ones, some of them just, it's unfair. Like, they don't add up. They just don't hold up, I should say, to some of these WrestleManias in here. Like, where am I supposed to place WrestleMania 2, on this compared to, in my opinion, like a WrestleMania 17 or a 19, which we'll talk about. Like, I don't know. I just, plus my memory's a little foggy on some of those. It wouldn't be fair, but I've seen every single WrestleMania on here numerous times. The ones in the last few years I've only seen live, but, it is what it is. My knowledge is good enough on them. So we're just sticking with the ones of the 2000s today. Ruthless Aggression, PG era, current era, whatever you want to say. I think my knowledge is good enough on these to place them in a fair manner. So that's what we're going to do today. Alrighty, let's get into things here. So again, it's in order. So we're kicking it off with WrestleMania 2000, aka WrestleMania 16. Now, I like this Mania. You got a good four-way in the main event. You got, of course, got the triangle ladder match. You got Angle, Benoit, Jericho, awesome triple threat match. But besides that, it's really not the best Mania in the world. And we do have some S tier competition on here, some A's, some B's. It's definitely not a D. However, and some people may think this is disrespectful, but I'm going C. I'm going C. It's not the best Mania, especially for that era. Especially if you go back and look at that card. I think you could have rearranged a couple of things and make it an even better Mania. I know we didn't have Austin, we didn't have Rock, but I still think it could have been a better Mania. So, I'm putting it as a C on the tier maker here. We're going to move through some of these. WrestleMania 17. Obviously, we don't need to sit here and debate this. This is God tier. This is S tier. S tier is God tier, the best of the best. WrestleMania 17, the best of the Attitude Era. Quite frankly, the culmination of the Attitude Era. And top to bottom, man, is just a great WrestleMania. From not only the main events with Austin and Rock and Taker, Triple H, the TLC matchup, but even some of the opening matchups like Jericho and William Regal. I know this is random, but I believe you had Eddie Guerrero and Test on that show. You had Angle and Benoit on that show. Just everything, man. It's a good pace Mania. There's a lot of good stuff. There's something for everybody on that WrestleMania, man. It's an awesome show. No debate here. I mean, some people would say this is the absolute best WrestleMania of all time. I would not argue. It's not my personal favorite of all time, but it certainly is an S tier WrestleMania. All right, we got WrestleMania 18. Now, I've recently rebooked this actually on the channel. You guys can go check out that video in the cards. And I, think this is a good Mania. I enjoy the Mania, but it's Hogan and Rock as, the centerfold. Triple H and Jericho is kind of affected because of it. And then you look at the whole undercard of the show, and it's a lot of random thrown together matches. So for that, I'm going to say this is a B WrestleMania. Hogan and Rock obviously elevates it up. If you didn't have Hogan and Rock on here, it might be a C WrestleMania. But Hogan and Rock, one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. The environment was insane. It's definitely a B Mania. I still think it's good. Like, I can still sit down and watch WrestleMania 18 and enjoy it. But again, like how we were talking about WrestleMania 2000, I think just rearranging some of the talent on the card can make it a better show. But still, you had Hogan and Rock on there, so I gotta go with a B. WrestleMania 19, to me, this is S tier. Just like WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 19 was also the culmination of a lot of guys. This is the end of Stone Cold's career. This is, up until last year, some of these comebacks. Just talking about full time, this is really the end of truly the end of Rock's full-time run. I know you could say SummerSlam 2002, but he came back, did this WrestleMania, and we had that cutoff there. We had Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon, which was kind of the end of that. Hogan coming back, and I don't want to say full-time because he wasn't full-time, but even some of the stuff on this Mania, man, like Angle and Lesnar, we were kicking off. You know what this Mania is good for? This is a good way to describe it. This is the first Mania of the Ruthless Aggression era, and it almost felt like the closing of one chapter one chapter in some ways and opening of another, if that makes sense. And again, it's just a top to bottom, really fun Mania. Ray versus Matt Hardy. You had Los Guerreros versus who the hell was in the matchup? Benoit and Rhino and World's Greatest Tag Team. Really fun little match there. You had Jericho and Shawn Michaels on this show. You had Triple H and Booker T, which I know is a hot topic, not necessarily right now, but just in general. But you know, still you got that on there. Obviously, Undertaker's match not too super memorable, but you had that on there with him and technically Nathan Jones versus Big Show and A Train. Again, Hogan and Vince, Austin Rock, and then of course the main event, Lesnar and Angle. It's an S tier WrestleMania, man. It is an awesome show. One of it's not my personal favorite of all time. It's definitely in my top 5 somewhere, though. I don't know what my top 5 is off the top of my head, but it's definitely in there. Next up, we got WrestleMania 20. I think this is a A+ Mania, honestly. Well, I mean, just A. It's not necessarily an A+, but just, you know, the 2 world title matches alone. And, you know, I keep mentioning his name. I know a lot of people, you don't even want to hear his name, but we're talking wrestling here. Who gives a damn? Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero ending the show the way they did. Such an emotional ending to the show that unfortunately we can't go back and relive year after year because of obvious reasons, but, you know, from WWE, but we can as fans. But an awesome triple threat match, one of the best triple threat matches of all time to end this show. Eddie versus Kurt Angle, awesome matchup, and it's just another one of those really fun shows overall. Cena winning his first first championship in general on this show to open the show versus Big Show, Madison Square Garden. It was an awesome environment. You had Evolution versus Rock and Mick Foley, the Rocket Sock Connection. I think it's a really good top to bottom show, just like, you know, some of these other ones we're to talk about. We're getting a lot of these Ruthless Aggression Manias, honestly. In my opinion, Ruthless Aggression, that, and I know I'm a little biased here, but I think it just had the best era of WrestleManias, man. From 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That is a great stretch. We'll talk about the rest of these in a moment, but that is just a great stretch of WrestleManias, man. Some better than others, but it's just an awesome stretch of WrestleMania. And when we get to some of these later Manias, like the past, you know, let's just say the past decade, for lack of, you know, a better term, it's gonna get a little bit more rough. So we're gonna appreciate these good ones. WrestleMania 20 at A for me. WrestleMania 21 is S tier, and I think this is plain and simple. Not only is it a great Mania, great matches on here. You had Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero kicking off the show, in an amazing matchup, and started their feud for 2005. Followed that up by the first Money in the Bank ladder match, which we still feel the effects of that to this day, and it's one of my favorite Money in the Bank ladder matches. We had Randy Orton versus Undertaker on this show. Great match. We had Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels, legendary matchup on this show. John Cena, Batista, of course, winning their first world titles. The two faces, you know, if you will, of the Ruthless Aggression era. This was their main event kickoff, man. WrestleMania 21 is kind of where it all began for them in the main event scene. It's an amazing Mania, man. It's my WrestleMania 22 is up there for personal reasons, and it's also just an amazing show. We're about to talk about it. But it's like my favorite is between 21 and 22. WrestleMania 21 also personally is the show that kicked off my whole wrestling fandom. Like, wrestling was in my house beforehand, but that was the first time I remember sitting down, truly paying attention and watching WrestleMania 21, and then I was a fan ever since. So, like, for me, it even has that bonus. So, to me, WrestleMania 21 is S tier, and I'm putting WrestleMania 22 up here as well, dude. Like, 21's great, 22 is just as good. And yeah, it doesn't have the significance of the John Cena Batista victories, but Ray, of course, winning his world title in that show. Really good main event, in my opinion, between John Cena and Triple H. And then, of course, the triple threat match between Ray, Angle, and Orton, even though it was short. Super good, still talked about to this day. And it was just a fun show, even with some of the mid-card matches, man. Benoit, JBL, the opening tag match with Big Show and Kane versus Masters and Carlito was really good. Another good Money in the Bank match. We had Edge versus Mick Foley in their badass hardcore match. We had Mickie James and Trish Stratus, which was a pretty good women's matchup for that time. We had Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. It was a great WrestleMania. Another one, just an S tier, God mode, one of the best of the best, in my opinion. Next up, we have WrestleMania 23. I gotta say, I think this is an A Mania. Honestly, for the two main events alone, obviously you had the hair versus hair, Vince versus Trump situation on this show, which, I mean, obviously the match between Bobby Lashley and Umaga was fine, but this Mania is up here for the two main events, man. Batista and Undertaker, I don't think people expected it to be as good as it was, and it turned out that was, you know, basically the feud of 2007, man, and it kicked off at WrestleMania 23. Shawn Michaels and John Cena, an absolutely classic, one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, in my opinion, as well. And again, some of the undercard matches, Money in the Bank, really, really good that year. That had a stacked card. The Hardys, Booker T, Edge and Randy Orton, CM Punk, and then you had Kennedy winning it. I believe Finlay was in it as well. Not sure if I forgot anybody there, but just a stacked Money in the Bank card for that lineup there. Yeah, Benoit and MVP, really good matchup for the United States Championship. And then I think there was a couple more undercard matches, but nothing that's really, too prominent to talk about. But WrestleMania 23, for these two matches alone, I gotta say it's an A+ mania. Next up, WrestleMania 24 from Orlando, Florida, 2008. Honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is a B mania. This is a good show. This is a good show. It's not as good as some of these other ones. And honestly, I think overall, I think WrestleMania 24 might even be better than WrestleMania 23. However, 23 had the better matches, so I'm still gonna keep that in A. 24, the better main event matches, excuse me. 24 still really good matches. Edge and Undertaker, great main event. The triple threat was good as well. I just don't think they were as good as the previous two main event matches. We had Big Show and Floyd Money Mayweather. That whole fiasco on this show. We had CM Punk's Money in the Bank win. What else was on this show? We had Kane beating Chavo Guerrero for the ECW title in like 8 seconds. We had a Belfast brawl between JBL and Finlay. It was a good mania. It was a good mania. And the last of the Ruthless Aggression manias. And what a way to top it off if that's really, the true end to the Ruthless Aggression manias, if you will. But I think it's a good one. So WrestleMania 24, we're going to put a B. WrestleMania 25, the old 25th anniversary of WrestleMania. Outside of Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, which was obviously one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, this wasn't the best WrestleMania. It's fine. It's good. You had Jeff Hardy versus Matt Hardy on here. Pretty good Extreme Rules match. But the two main events were kind of just Triple H versus Randy Orton should have went out there and beat the hell out of each other. Instead, they had a wrestling matchup. The triple threat for the world title should have just been Cena versus Edge, really culminating their year's worth of feuding. But instead, you had Big Show in there. And, nothing against a Big Show, but he just really didn't need to be in that spot. It just wasn't the best overall WrestleMania. So overall, I'm going to give 25th anniversary a C here. I think it's on par to an extent. Obviously, these are two different C's here. These are two different C's, but there's no C plus and C minuses, if you will. WrestleMania 25 probably like a C plus, but we're just sticking with C. So 25th anniversary, it's Shawn and Taker, and then everything else, in my opinion. WrestleMania 26, I can honestly say the same thing. Shawn and Taker, and then the main events were good here. You had Cena versus Batista, good matchup. Jericho and Edge, I remember being pretty good. You had some solid undercard matches with Triple H and Sheamus, Ray and CM Punk, or in Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase, but they were kind of just good matches. Nothing really felt super like that was WrestleMania besides Undertaker and Undertaker and Shawn Michaels on 26, just like it's 25. So I think that's fair to put it as a C as well. WrestleMania 27. This is another WrestleMania we've recently rebooked here on the channel. You guys can go check that out as well. I gotta say this is a D. I gotta say it's a D. Honestly, part of me wants to put it up on a C because of Undertaker and Triple H, but the rest of the show is really forgettable, honestly. You had Cena and Miz in the main event, Edge and Del Rio opening the show, which these matches are significant for other reasons, like Edge, that ended up being his last, matchup for 9 years. Cena, that was Cena and Miz, that was kind of the kickoff to Cena and Rock in a way for next year and the year after that. But the matches themselves were kind of Cody Rhodes versus Rey Mysterio was a good matchup. It just wasn't the best overall WrestleMania, and it certainly wasn't on the par of these two, which I still think were good shows. So even though Triple H and Taker tore it down on 27, I think I'm going to give it a D here. WrestleMania 28, the old once in a lifetime. I'm going to go B here. I'm going to go B. Cena and Rock, first time ever. Obviously, it was more of a superstar, collision matchup more than it was some great wrestling match, but still the first time it happened, big matchup, great moment. And of course, the real seller of this show, you had Undertaker, Triple H, end of an era Hell in the Cell matchup. For those two matches alone, it's got to be at least a B. And honestly, it could be higher, but some of the other matches on the show, like CM Punk versus Chris Jericho, was kind of disappointing. Sheamus and Daniel Bryan, although it ended up, playing a big factor for years to come and being, always referenced and whatnot. The whole 18-second world title matchup was kind of all right. And then the rest of the undercard was kind of forgettable. But those two matches, specifically Taker and Triple H inside Hell in the Cell, I think, elevate this Mania. So we're going to put it a solid B. WrestleMania 29, which was actually my first WrestleMania that I attended in person, first of two. We also will talk about 35 in a little while. But honestly, even though I was there, I got to be fair here. I'm gonna go C. I'm gonna go C. I think Cena and Rock. Honestly, like I haven't watched the 28 match in a while. I don't know how different from what I remember, how different it was from the 29 match. But both of the Cena and Rock matches were still good. You had an awesome Undertaker versus CM Punk match on this show. Shield's first WrestleMania here, so that's notable. I think it's fair to say 29. Some people might disagree. Some people might say I should put it on at D, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, but I think it's at least fair to put it on the same levels of 26, 25, 2000. I think that's fair. WrestleMania 29, we're going to give it a C. WrestleMania 30. I mean, this one was historic for so many reasons, dude. I think we got to put it as an A. I think we got to put it as an A. Daniel Bryan, of course, kicking off the show, ending the show. The whole Yes Movement storyline was probably even though it was like incidental at first, the best storyline that we've gotten in WWE. Or what am I trying to say here? That was the last time we got a storyline that good since the Bloodline storyline we've been getting right now. Does that make sense? But that culminated at WrestleMania 30. We had, of course, Brock Lesnar beating the streak at WrestleMania 30. 30 was just a historic WrestleMania. And of course, it was WrestleMania 30, historic in its own right. What about the segment that kicked off the show with Hogan, Austin, and Rock? That was unexpected. That was super cool. WrestleMania 30 is an A-Mania. All right, 31, WrestleMania 31. I think this is a solid B. And honestly, part of me could push it to an A. No, I'm sticking with B. Listen, I think WrestleMania 31 was really good. You know what I remember about WrestleMania 31? It being better than a lot of people expected. I think a lot of people were a little down on the card going in. You know, Undertaker and Bray not going to be that good. Cena and Rusev not going to be that good. And listen, I'm not saying these were knockdown, drag-out matches, but it was still a good Mania overall. And I think it ended, obviously, with one of the most historic, WrestleMania moments ever. Lesnar and Roman Reigns, nobody really wanted to see the matchup for the most part. Then that week, I think a lot of people got excited because Lesnar had announced he wasn't going back to UFC. He was going to re-sign with WWE. So that added a level of unpredictability to that main event. And then, of course, we got Seth Rollins cashing in after what was honestly a really good, probably Lesnar and Reigns' best matchup, if I had to think about it, at WrestleMania 31. I think this was a solid Mania, really good show. And I think, again, remembering from that time, 2015, was better than a lot of people expected. So I'm going to go WrestleMania 31 at a B. WrestleMania 32, easy. D. Dude, this show, another one we just recently rebooked. You guys know what I'm going to say, up in the cards right here. This show is just, ugh. It's just, like, I'm not saying there's not some good stuff here. You can really, it's just like the ladder match, AJ and Jericho. That's really it. Like, honestly, some of the, like, all the big matches. I mean, no, you had Sasha, Becky, Charlotte. That was good. But all the big time main events, Taker and Shane, Roman and Triple H, Lesnar and Ambrose, they all either sucked or were disappointing, and it's just, this Mania was like the first of a long stretch of Manias that were just going 5, 6, 7 out. It was just too long. The Mania sucked, and the WrestleMania 32, very forgettable. The next time they go back to Dallas for 38 last year was a lot better. We'll talk about that, obviously, at the end, but WrestleMania 32 is a D. WrestleMania 33, part of me honestly wants to put this on a D as well, but I think there's some more positives we can pull from WrestleMania 33 that opposed to 32 and 27. So for that, I'm going to put it as a C. Listen, we started it off with, what the hell was the opening match? AJ Styles and Shane McMahon, which was a really good matchup. We had the Hardy Boys returning on this show. I know some people weren't a fan of it, and obviously there's the whole story of Vince McMahon not being a fan of it, but Kevin Owens and Jericho still had a good matchup on that show. It was honestly probably the most entertaining match that Lesnar and Goldberg had in their series of matches over the years between WrestleMania 20, Survivor Series 2016, and this. This is probably the most entertaining. It was like a 5-minute sprint. It was actually half decent here. For those, I'll give it a solid, thumbs up. Overall, we'll put it as a C. I don't really remember much about Rollins versus Triple H. It was probably good, but I don't think I've watched it since I watched it live. So I'm going to say C. I don't think it was as bad as 32. It was at least a step up. I think C's fair. WrestleMania 34, I think, is a back down to a D. Honestly, there's just a whole lot of disappointment on this Mania, man. Lesnar and Reigns, we were all like, all right, Reigns, even though we don't want him to win the title, he'll win it, and then we'll move on from Brock Lesnar as Universal Champion. And then Lesnar retained. We had AJ versus Nakamura putting on a stinker, which was probably no fault of their own, but it was just like not what any of us expected. And then we had Cena versus Undertaker, which was a 5-minute squash, which was like fine. I wasn't expecting anything crazy out of that at the time anyway. To me, I remember 2018 being like the ship kind of sailed on this match, but hey, if they want to do it, they want to do it. And then The only thing I really remember about the undercard, I know we had Daniel Bryan coming back on that show, but it wasn't like the most memorable tag team match. And the only thing I really remember solid about the undercard was the opening matchup between Rollins, Miz, and Balor for the Intercontinental title was actually pretty good. But the rest of the Mania, man, was just a big stinker in my opinion. So we're going WrestleMania 34 as a D. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, hold on. We did have the Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon match on this show, which was actually good. But I still, you know what? Nah, I'm still keeping it where it is. I could maybe elevate it to a C, but honestly, the main events were such stinkers that I don't think I can do that. I'm keeping it as a D. WrestleMania 35, the second WrestleMania that I attended. Listen, everybody remembers this show for 3 reasons: Rollins, Kofi, Becky. But you take those moments out of the show, this show honestly is not that great. And listen, I had some personal nostalgia in this show. Both 2 of my favorites of all time, Batista and Kurt Angle, both retired on this show, will never wrestle again. I got to be there for it. So personally, there is some not nostalgia, but some sentimental value, I should say, for WrestleMania 35 on top of the fact for me being there. But if I'm taking all that out and just judging it as a Mania itself, this is not a Mania that I'm going to go back and really watch. And I was there. I don't even think I've gone back and watched the show once. You know, maybe moments, maybe a match, but I don't think I've gone back and watched the show once. Rollins, Kofi, Becky, all good moments, but it just really wasn't an overall good Mania. So I'm putting it as a D. Pandemic WrestleMania, man, WrestleMania 36. Listen, they did the best they could, but no, I'm never going to go back and watch it. I watched it live and that was it. And honestly, like, we had Taker versus AJ, which was the cinematic Boneyard match, which was freaking awesome. The Bray and John Cena Firefly Funhouse match was actually entertaining. But besides that, like, I don't remember any of the actual wrestling matches that took place. Like, I know McIntyre won the title, Braun Strowman won the title, Edge and Randy Orton had their last man standing match. Everybody was bitching like it went too long, as if anybody. What am I trying to say? As if any of us were doing anything. This Mania took place like 3 weeks into the pandemic. Edge and Randy Orton went like 35 minutes. Everybody was losing their minds. Like, you ain't doing nothing anyway besides sitting on the couch. Let them fight. I remember liking the matchup, but regardless, like, it's just not a Mania that I think sticks out. It only sticks out really because of the pandemic and those specialty matches. But like, I don't know. I think D. You know, honestly, I could probably put this as a C because of those matches. I think that's almost fair. And I know somebody else might be saying like, well, you could put these 2 as a C because of some of their matches, but like, this was a unique Mania and they made the best out of some of those situations. So you know what? I'm going to boost it up to a C. And again, I'm not saying all these like WrestleManias that are on a C or on a D and B and A, like, or whatever, all necessarily the same levels, but we're not working with C pluses and C minuses and just C flats here. We're just, everything's on one level for the 5 levels we have. So, you know, we're working with the levels we got. Obviously, everything we can sit here, compare, and nitpick, but I'm working with what I got. Get off my back. WrestleMania 37, the one that was actually in Tampa Bay, Florida, unlike the year before where it was supposed to be there and of course didn't happen. Honestly, this Mania I remember being solid. You know, this is the first in-person 2-night Mania, and I'm gonna just jump around from both nights here, but we had Lashley and McIntyre having a good match, Bianca and Sasha having a great main event, Riddle and Sheamus tearing it down for the United States title. We had an awesome triple threat match between Reigns, Edge, and Bryan on night 2 for the Universal Championship. What the hell else am I forgetting? Orton pretty much ended Bray Wyatt's career for good on, on I think it was night 2. Honestly, I think this was a good enough Mania to say C. And again, I'm not saying all these ones that are on C are necessarily on the same level, but we're not working with C pluses and C minuses. I think WrestleMania 37 was a solid show between both nights, so I'm gonna put it as a C. And then that would lead us into WrestleMania 38, last year's Mania. And honestly, this might surprise some people, because especially with some of these, you know, Manias that we got on C, but I might put this as a B. I wasn't even watching watching WWE on a week-to-week basis last year at WrestleMania, and I know it wasn't just me. The general consensus was that WrestleMania 38 surprised a lot of people, and the card did not look that good going in, but it was a hell of a show on both nights. Very entertaining. Honestly, the biggest disappointment from that last year's WrestleMania weekend was we had Lesnar and Reigns, and they did the same shit they always did. It was nothing that crazy. But like, both nights were really fun shows. We had Stone Cold coming back on night 1, having that brawl match with Kevin Owens. It was great. Sami Zayn we were like, damn, Sami Zayn's got to face Johnny Knoxville. That sucks. And it ended up being one of the most memorable things in the last like decade. It was one of the best things that Sami Zayn's ever done in his career. It was freaking awesome. What else the hell happened last year? I know on night 1 we had RK Bro, Alpha Academy, and Street Profits, or excuse me, that was night 2 for the Raw Tag Titles. Really fun matchup. Just listen, it was just last year. We had Ray and Dominic versus Logan Paul and Miz, which was ended up being freaking great. Obviously, between both nights, it was a really solid WrestleMania. And again, maybe I'm being a little unfair to some of these WrestleManias in C, because we could probably put them as maybe a B or something like that. But something's got to be on C. And this is just my opinion. Listen, you want to make your own tier list? I created this thing, so I'll link it down below in the description. You can make your own tier list. Tweet it at me. My Twitter's on the screen, as you can see. But anyways, to recap, we have WrestleMania 17, 19, 21, 22 in S tier. We have 20, 23, and 30 in A tier. We have 18, 24, 31, 28, and 38 in B. We have WrestleMania 2000, aka 16, 25, 26, 29, 33, 36, and 37 on C. And D Manias, just never going to go back and look at them in my life. 27. I mean, I might go back and look at Taker, Triple H or something for 27. But the point is, overall show, we have 27, 32, 34, 35. That's how I'm feeling. That's how I'm feeling for my 2000s and 2010s WrestleMania. Guys, again, I will link this tier list down below in the description, so if you want to make your own, definitely do so and tweet it at me so I can see what everybody else thinks about the 2000 and 2010 WrestleManias. Thank you guys for checking out this video. Plenty more content to come this following week as we lead into WrestleMania 39 next weekend. My WrestleMania 39 predictions will be coming either Thursday or Friday, so stay tuned for those right here on the No Nation Wrestling YouTube channel. Thank you guys for checking this out. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.